Brit Chadasha reading for Parashat HaShavua. God's trumpet call presents Matthew chapter 26, verse 59 to 66. Apostle Matthew. Apostle Matthew, also known as Saint Matthew and Levi, was one of the 12 disciples of Yeshua HaMashiach. He is traditionally regarded as the author of the Gospel of Matthew. Matthew was working as a tax collector or publican. He was sitting by the customs house in Capernaum, Israel, on the Sea of Galilee at a tax booth when Yeshua called him to follow him. Yeshua simply said, "Follow me." Matthew immediately followed him and became a disciple. Tax collectors were agents of the Roman Empire and collected taxes to return to the government. Because he was a tax collector, many other Jews and Christians did not trust him because of the persecution the Roman Empire had inflicted on the religious groups. Tax collectors had very little accountability. When tax collectors came to be baptized by John the Baptist, they said, "Teacher, what shall we do?" And he told them, "Collect no more than you are authorized to do." Luke chapter 3, verse 12 to 13. After his call to follow Yeshua, Levi gave a dinner in his house, and scribes and Pharisees criticized Yeshua on seeing him eat with tax collectors and sinners. But Yeshua replied, "I came not to call the righteous but sinners." Mark chapter 2, verse 15 to 17. Matthew is mentioned in all three Synoptic Gospels, Matthew, Mark, and Luke. He is listed among the disciples in the book of Acts. Matthew was there throughout almost all of Yeshua's ministry. It is hard to say how Matthew died. The earliest records say that he carried out his ministry in Ethiopia, Persia, Macedonia, and or Syria. Not what we know as Ethiopia, but a region south of the Caspian Sea. Clement of Alexandria quotes Heracleon, earlier commentators on the New Testament, that the Matthew died naturally. False witnesses. Brit Chadasha reading comes from the Gospel of Matthew. The portion of reading is from Matthew chapter 26, verse 56 to 66. The reading begins with the verse, "The chief priests and the whole Sanhedrin were looking for false witnesses against Yeshua so that they could put him to death." Matthew chapter 26, verse 59. Chief priests and Sanhedrin, which is the highest Jewish council and court in Jerusalem during the time of Yeshua. They had both political power and religious influence. Chief priests were religious leaders in Jerusalem during the time of Yeshua. They were responsible for temple worship and had political power and influence. The Sanhedrin consisted of chief priests, elders, and scribes. They were responsible for both civil and religious matters. They looked for false testimonies to come against Yeshua in order to put him to death. The Torah specifically prohibits false testimony both in judicial and daily matters. Exodus chapter 20, verse 16 says, "You shall not bear false witness against your neighbor, because it misleads and harms someone's reputation and lead to unjust legal outcomes." Yeshua was facing trial and ultimately death on the cross. They tried to achieve their purpose through false testimonies, but they did not find any. Though many false witnesses came forward, finally 2 came forward. Matthew chapter 26, 60. They found some to give false witness, but the religious leaders could not use them to their advantage. Finally, 2 men came forward bearing false witness, which is a violation of God's commandments. One who bears false witnesses is far from truth and righteousness. Yeshua remained silent in the face of false accusations. Yeshua stood firm in truth and righteousness amidst false accusations and persecutions, and declared, "This man said, I am able to destroy the temple of God and rebuild it in 3 days." Matthew chapter 26 verse 61. The false witnesses said, this fellow said, I am able to destroy the temple of God and rebuild it in 3 days. This was a misinterpretation of what Yeshua said. Jerusalem temple represents presence of God by saying that he will build the temple in 3 days. He was referring to his own resurrection, which is a fundamental belief of Yeshua's followers. So the high priest stood up and asked him, have you no answer? What are these men testifying against you? Matthew chapter 26 verse 62. It was Caiaphas who was the high priest at the time. He played a significant role in the trial of Yeshua. Yeshua was questioned during his trial before the Sanhedrin. The evidence the false witnesses brought was misleading and conflicting. But Yeshua remained silent. Then the high priest said to him, I charge you under oath by the living God. Tell us if you are the Christ, the Son of God. Matthew chapter 26 verse 63. Yeshua remained silent, which is also a fulfillment of prophecy in Isaiah 53 verse 7. Yeshua is the suffering servant who took upon himself the sin of the world. The high priest's words, I charge you under oath, makes a person to speak the truth. Caiaphas appealed to God, which reflects the Jewish understanding of God as alive and present. Son of man, you have said it yourself, Yeshua answered, but I say to you, all of you, from now on, you will see the Son of Man sitting at the right hand of power and coming on the clouds in heaven. Matthew chapter 26 verse 64. Here Yeshua answered the question high priest asked. During his trial, Yeshua said, you have said so. He did not change his word, but affirmed his identity and prophesied his future return to earth. Yeshua used the title Son of Man for himself, which is from Daniel chapter 7 verse 13 to 14. This is a prophecy that signified Yeshua's messianic role and divine authority. The phrase right hand of power indicate Yeshua's authority and his honor and exaltation. In Matthew chapter 27 verse 1, Yeshua gave the same answer to the governor. And in Mark chapter 15:2, Yeshua replied Pilate with the same answer. At this, the high priest tore his clothes and declared, he has blasphemed. Why do we need any more witnesses? Look, now you have heard the blasphemy. Matthew chapter 26 verse 65. The high priest treated it as a blasphemy. Tearing clothes was a way of expressing outrage. Leviticus chapter 21 verse 10 specifically states the high priest is not to tear his garments. Blasphemy is a serious offense against God. Yeshua was not blaspheming God. He did not withhold but revealed his true identity. Caiaphas' reaction showed weakness in human judgment. What do you think? He deserves to die, they answered. Matthew chapter 26 verse 66. Caiaphas was addressing the council with the question, what do you think? The spiritual blindness that was on Caiaphas was used to fulfill God's redemptive plan. This showed the weakness of human judgment. Scripture foretold many times about the trial and suffering of Yeshua, so that we may know and believe that Yeshua is the promised Messiah. Please share this video and spread the good news of salvation. Remember to like it and subscribe to this channel. Thank you for watching.